Welcome to the With You podcast, where we explore real relationships and life transitions. I'm David.
And I'm Tara. And this season, we're doing a deep dive into the topic of marriage.
Yeah, we've been married for 30 years.
Yeah, about that.
And I'm a marriage and family therapist, so it's a subject that we're especially interested in.
Yeah, and so we've been taking a little time away to interview a bunch of married couples from a variety of ages, stages, and backgrounds to hear their stories.
Next week, we'll start hearing their stories, but today we're going to kick off the season by talking about our relationship and our ideas about finding a life partner.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We actually recorded this 6 months ago when we were just getting our podcast started. So today you'll hear from our friend Claire. Claire was there at the very beginning, helping us get organized and keeping us on track. We needed help. We wouldn't have gotten started without her. But it turns out she's got a real life, so she couldn't record with us every day. So enjoy her contribution to our podcast today.
Yeah, so here we go. Let's talk about marriage and finding the one. All right, well, the idea for today's conversation is finding your life partner.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Coincidentally, we are life partners.
Yeah, so it works out pretty well that we figured at least one iteration of this out. So it's going to be kind of wanting to know why this is important, like why picking a spouse or why picking a life partner is important. And Claire, do you have any ideas about that?
Knew you were going to do this to me.
Yeah, we want to welcome Claire. Claire's here with us. And so we're going to put her on the spot occasionally, being that she may in the future want to find a life partner. But maybe not. So
maybe I've already found one and haven't told you.
Oh, well.
That's a possibility.
All right. Well, this is a perfect place to let us know about your life partner.
Or is this marketing for me?
Yeah, so please call 555-5555 and then ask for Claire. So when we think about life partners, for me, it's thinking about partnership. But then there's what does that look like and how does culture involve it? And then other things like I love the developmental side of relationship formation. So I think it might be fun to talk about that too.
Right. Well, and most songs in this world are about love and finding your person. And people talk about finding their soulmate.
Oh, I
you
have a story.
You are my density.
Nice.
Good Back to the Future reference.
I love it. Yeah. Or the Tobey Maguire, you complete me.
Right.
And a little heart and those jewelry things where there's two half of hearts coming together as one.
Princess Bride.
Yeah.
True love.
I know as a marriage and family therapist, I know I should probably be more romantic, but those things make me kind of, I don't know, vomit in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah. I think when we talk about life partner, we should talk about what we feel about soulmates because that's not how we came at finding each other as life partners.
No. And soulmates go back a long way. So I know I won't geek out too much on this. I'll just kind of tell a brief story. But in Plato's Symposium, right, he has this character, Aristophanes, kind of giving a speech. I know, isn't it horrible?
Okay, here we go.
So
we should have a title when David starts geaking out.
Let me nerd out just a little bit.
Tell us about soulmates.
So the idea that people were put together. So Aristophanes talks about people being put together. They had two faces, or not people, but these kind of monstrosities. They had two faces, 4 arms, 4 legs, and they were cartwheeling. We just saw Claire do a cartwheel?
We did see Claire do a cartwheel yesterday.
I couldn't picture
that. Was impressive.
Put that on my resume.
Yeah, but imagine doing that with double the amount of limbs that you have.
So what does that have to do with soulmates, David? Help us out.
So, well, they moved very fast, which I am not doing, but these things move very fast, and the Greek god, the Olympic gods were really concerned that these things were going to take over them and just overwhelm them. And so Zeus cut them in half and that asked Apollo to kind of like seal up the wounds, but make sure that they faced their wounds so they knew that they were incomplete. And the whole purpose then, rather than storming Olympus, these kind of cut in half people now with one face, two arms, two legs were constantly looking for their other half. And there was one specific other half of their existence. And so that was kind of their soulmate, or their, that you complete me. All those movie references we just made really comes from this kind of Platonic idea of we are incomplete.
Platonic meaning Plato.
Yeah.
The philosopher.
The philosopher.
Okay.
But that we're incomplete, that we're only half of what
Of
we
a whole
should be,
being,
of a
right.
whole being.
Right. A lot of people think they're going through life in search of the one person who can complete them. And I think we should start from that bigger picture viewpoint of that's not what we're talking about with finding a life partner. At least that's
Right.
not our philosophy. People have different philosophies about finding love, but we'll tell you our thoughts and our story of
Yep.
how we found each other and what we were looking for. But I don't think either of us came from the perspective that we needed to find the perfect person that would make us complete.
Or that there's just one person out there.
Right.
Like,
If you do it wrong, you're going to find the
out
wrong
of
one.
7 billion people, there's only one for you, Tara. And hey, lucky you found me.
Yeah, of all the millions of people. How did I do that?
Divine providence. But that's one way of thinking. And so you hear these kind of Valentine's Day commercials, and everything's about you have to find your other half. The implication of that for relationships is then
Is that single people are incomplete. Right.
Single people are incomplete
Right.
and can't live a flourishing life, which is, I see Claire making kind of a strangling motion. But I think that's exactly right. Of then it debases individual existence outside of a committed relationship. And that's not necessarily how we see things.
Not what we believe about being a human being in the world.
And even in relationship, it puts that pressure on, like, I need you. Oh, I need you to complete me. Like all my needs, my emotions, you're responsible for.
Any dating relationship, if somebody said that to me, it freaked me out.
Yeah.
If you need me that much, I got to run.
and she's a quick runner. She has a good first step.
She's an Olympic runner.
She is an Olympic runner.
Torch bearer.
Torch bearer.
As long as you're carrying the torch for me, I'm all good about that.
See, yeah.
So are we going to cut out?
Despite those things.
Are we going to cut out all the dad jokes?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think people are here for the dad jokes.
Yeah, because otherwise
Yeah.
I'd have a very small part of this podcast.
Mhm.
But that kind of sickly sweet idea that in dating that you're looking for someone to complete you, but and then in the relationship, flourishing really is outside of your control. It's like, I need you to do certain things or I'm not okay. And that's huge pressure and unrealistic in any type of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of talking about finding our other perfect half, we'll be focusing more on just long-term committed relationships, life partners, spouses. There's a lot of different ways people are getting into long-term commitments these days.
Yeah. And I think about those long-term commitments of there's kind of a couple of things that go into that of compatibility. I mean, that's one thing. The relationship being bigger than just our individual needs and goodness of fit. I mean, those are the things that I think about, but I don't know how much we want to get into those.
Well, we will be talking about those things, our kind of tips and takeaways for what we think are some of the top things to be looking for.
Nice. So,
but we're going to start telling about sort of how we came about it, I think.
Do we have to?
I think I've heard this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
5 times
are asked about it a lot, but
it's a great story.
But before we even met at O'Hare Airport,
yeah,
what were we looking? Were you looking for a life partner at that point? We were in college. I don't think we really were.
I just no. I was looking for someone to have fun with. And you look like a lot of fun. But maybe that's like when thinking about dating, if we can, I mean, that's what, 40 years ago? Can we kind of go back that far?
Not quite that long ago.
Oh, it just feels like that.
Oh, good.
But
feels like forever.
When you were dating, even before BD, before David, what were you looking for in a relationship when you thought about relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think before you get to the stage where you're looking for someone for a long term, lifetime commitment. I don't know that I was thinking about what I was looking for. Sometimes it just happens to be proximity and opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's
But
true.
also I was discerning. I didn't seize every opportunity.
Well, that's
I
good
think
to know.
the things that I valued most in the people I want to spend more time with was not taking themselves too seriously, sense of humor, which is why we're still together.
Hey, all right.
Intelligence, kindness, things that make you actually want to hang out with somebody
Yeah.
and feel good about them and yourself.
Yeah. I think friendship is the
Mhm.
big encompassing of all of that, of looking for someone that likes to do the same things or some of the similar things or can appreciate that.
Right. And what were you looking for, David?
If I'm really honest, my teenage brain and young 20s brain was looking for a hottie, which I found in you. So there was the physical attraction part, but it was about doing life together. So like enjoying doing activities, whether it was cooking in the
I
apartments.
think we learned to cook together.
Yeah, and we start out with, I don't know if we can talk about products, but it was that kind of, I'm just going to say it, Chicken Tonight. I don't think it's even produced anymore.
I think you're good.
So what
Yeah.
else?
So we started dating in college,
We
but
did.
we started with friendship. We really were
Yeah,
friends
we were
long
study
before,
buddies.
yeah. So we really felt like our foundation started with friendship
It did.
because we already liked hanging out together. So that was the main foundation. Was we really enjoyed just hanging around each other.
Yeah.
And I guess it developed
Well,
from there.
And I think it was safety. A thing, I don't know if I was looking for that, but being with you, being able to talk through things, us disagreeing about things and it being okay. Like we didn't have to see things the same way
Mhm.
to continue to be connected. And actually we see things differently on not a lot of topics, but occasionally, and it's
Mhm.
actually good. Like our well-being doesn't have to be connected to our agreement, because there's the trust and respect. And so I think that was the most interesting thing after getting past the physical attraction towards you, was the kind of the intellectual curiosity that we were able to do together, the fun we were able to have. But it takes practice. I mean, I think kind of our dating lives before each other were figuring those things out. And I think that's important, that it's not this like one person or like I'm going to miss them, or the pressure that I think sometimes gets put on dating, that finding that partner that you could do life with forever is a exploratory study.
That's a good way to put it, the exploratory study. And I think once we started dating, some things that helped us know that we were compatible, bigger than, the other people we had dated. I think very early on when we started this dating relationship, you took me to meet your parents, like just a couple weeks in, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
You couldn't wait to introduce me to your family, which is in itself, I thought was a great sign. I wanted to see where you came from, and that you were excited to introduce me to your parents was a good sign that,
Yeah.
you felt confident about me, that you were excited to have me join your family. So that we started early with thinking about family integration,
Yeah.
not just being part of one person's life, but their whole family.
And the bigger picture of realizing it wasn't just us getting together, but that it was bringing our families together. And so I think that's a really important piece, kind of philosophically, in addition to kind of the takeaways, is marriage is about more than just
The two individuals.
getting your needs gratified, right? I know this is a weird way of talking about it, but I think sometimes we can think of the other person as a needs gratifying object. And it kind of depersonalized, like you're there for my happiness, you're there for soothing me, you're there for sexual attraction and release, you're there
Buying your
for
toothpaste.
buying my toothpaste, my wardrobe,
Making your dinner.
Yeah, but but that depersonalizes the other as just an object to meet my needs versus another person that we're entering into this for something bigger than
Mm-hmm.
needs being met. And introducing family is part of that.
Yeah. I remember when you met my family.
Oh yeah.
So-
Let's tell that story. That was so embarrassing. Claire, just put your finger. I don't want anybody to hear this. So just put your fingers in your ears.
No.
No,
Let's
she's
hear it.
all ears.
We were seniors in college, and he had taken me to meet his family in September because we really started dating at the beginning of our senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And my family lived in Arizona. So the first opportunity was spring break in March. So I brought David back with me to Arizona. And these were back in the days when your family could be waiting for you right outside the gate.
Gateway or gangplank.
Right when you open the plane door, basically. They're right there. So my 4 younger siblings and both my parents were waiting right at the end of the gate. And David ran up, wrapped my dad in a bear hug, and picked him up off the ground.
No.
Yeah. Well, and you have to understand, Tara's dad is a lieutenant colonel in the Army and is like a competitive runner and just kind of an amazing man that's manly.
So personality wise, you're
different.
an extrovert, he's an introvert.
Yep.
You're taller, he's shorter, you're effusive, he keeps things closer to the vest.
I like to hug. He likes to shake hands.
Yeah.
Wow.
David's families are huggers. My family didn't express things quite as effusively. In those days, I think they've grown since then. But
they were standing there. And since we were in our early 20s and Tara's the oldest, so there's 4 other kids there. There's Tara and she's the tallest and they all kind of go down like
I don't even think I was the tallest then, but I was the oldest.
To me, coming off the plane, it looked that way. It looked like the Von Trapp family standing there and they're all kind of height working down.
And so he gave my dad such a big hug that he literally, his feet came off the floor.
Dangling
and there was this, David still remembers this gasp and a silence from the rest of us while we watched to see what was going to happen.
6
but
people going.
My dad started giggling and they were good friends ever since.
We were good friends, but he put me through my paces.
He did test you.
Yeah, he took me for a bike ride and it's in the Arizona desert and Tara and her brother were riding with us and then they just kind of peeled off and disappeared. And it was just me and Dr. Barnett riding bikes out into the desert. And I was like, oh, this is how I die. I'm left in the desert.
This is hazy.
For death. And I believe the conversation was something along, what are your intentions for my daughter as we're riding in, 100-degree heat?
And we've been dating for maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And
And
we were college students.
I couldn't tell if I was sweating from the conversation or for the exertion or from the heat. And it was a 14-mile bike ride.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you is right. We got back and I was emotionally sore as well as saddle sore. And I was like, where did you guys go? And Charles like, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
I still to this day don't remember that happened, that Craig and I left you.
Yeah, you just blacked right out.
I don't know if that was prearranged.
It felt like it was prearranged. But then
Dad got his alone time with you and you must have passed the test.
Yeah, because now this will be our 30th year of marriage. And so we've managed to survive. But something that was beautiful about your family and meeting your dad was then after that meeting, as we were leaving, you didn't get to see this. He gave me a letter and said, read that when you get back to college. So it got back to college and it was like, David, however you want to proceed with my daughter, you have my blessing.
Oh, he didn't answer you on the spot.
Oh, no. And
no.
we were just dating. So we didn't have.
We hadn't declared any long-term intentions. I don't think even to each other.
No, or to ourselves.
Yes, that's true.
It was just kind of like.
But my dad was very
intentional
that way. That was part of who he was. And when he married my mom, he didn't even get to meet my mom's parents before their wedding day.
Yeah.
And he was very unsure if he was accepted, and he wanted to make it very clear to you that you had his blessing.
Well, and so that's the beautiful side and the idea of it's long-term, it's a family commitment. Tara's time with my family, we went to a show and my brother was 16 years old.
The story.
Yeah, we're driving out of the parking lot.
We went to the symphony, I think, and we were leaving. We were all dressed up very fancy, and it was Nathan's first time meeting this like a serious girlfriend that you brought home, and he was trying to be on his best behavior the whole night. And
we're in the parking.
I'm sorry, Nathan, but we're going to.
No, I'm not sorry, Nathan. You shouldn't have done this. But so we're in the parking garage, and he's like, "Stop the car!" And he gets out and kind of walks. And Dad then continues to drive.
He was walking alongside the moving car, and then got back in. And I was like, "What was happening?" And he was needing to pass gas, and he didn't want to ruin it for David by doing it in the car by me.
So that let me know that then the family was interested, because that usually didn't happen. It would be just like, hey, somebody rolled down the window. Yeah. And so that was like, oh, they really liked her. And then as we continued to date, we would hear from our families, not just the support of like, we're interested in Tara, but my parents said, if you break up with her, we're keeping her.
Independently, both of our families said that to us. They said, we'll be on David's side if you break up with him.
Did that put pressure on you guys?
Yeah, I think it was when they knew we were already moving in the forever direction.
Yeah, but I do think,
but it was also...
That's a really good question, because I think that can be the downside of introducing your significant other to family, is they can, how invested do they get? Your relationship with your family, like, do you, are you like more of a antagonist like me? So if they really like her, well then, I don't know if I like her then. There can be a lot of that. So needing to have kind of some sense of security in the relationship before getting feedback from friends, and thinking about the relationship not as, oh, we enter in and there's this intensity and we're all in, but it's a developmental growth. And so we're hopefully our emotional connection, our physical connection, our spiritual connection, our time together is going to be congruent or kind of lined up. I think one thing that happens that's a problem for couples that are trying to figure out finding a dating pattern is those get skewed. So it's really hard when maybe you're really emotionally connected, but not physically connected, or really physically connected and not emotionally or spiritually connected. Ideally, you'd want those four things to line up in the same level of connection and intimacy as you work towards a commitment in relationship.
Yeah.
But
that's a good point. I think it's interesting that in our relationship and in a lot of our family members' relationships, there's been a period of long distance in their pre-engagement or marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see how that physical separation has kind of increased a different type of intimacy in, writing letters and having phone calls. And it was letters in our day.
Yeah. So for the kids out there, what is a letter, Tara?
A piece of paper and
and it was an air paper for us.
Yeah. Well, I was in Australia after we graduated for the summer.
So the post office had very special, like, blue paper
airmail letters.
Airmail letters. So you'd write on this kind of thin airmail letter.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so extra vintage. Yeah, we'll have to find one and take a picture of it and show.
Yeah.
But yeah, having communication.
Show it on the podcast.
Yeah,
put it in the show notes.
Isn't there? Yeah, or Instagram or some Instabook or Facegram, whatever it is. There'll be
emphasis on the vintage.
Yeah, I am totally vintage. But being able to communicate in ways that aren't just physical.
Yeah, or aren't clouded by the physical. Mm-hmm. Help you develop the intimacy in other ways.
Yeah, it's a really, we're not saying, live apart for a long time. So that
for me, honestly, that long distance period was sort of a test, or like it helped me determine just what your level of commitment was, because I was far away across the ocean and we weren't engaged yet, and you had to work extra hard to communicate. And he managed to send flowers to me all the way from, because I had
from Grand Haven, Michigan
birthday,
to Melbourne,
my
Australia.
Birthday in Australia, and flowers arrived, and you called I was staying with my grandparents, and you called long distance.
Yeah, that was my whole paycheck from the trolley that week. I drove a trolley and gave tours. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. But I ended up talking to your granddad and granddie more than I did you on that call. I was
Right.
like, can I talk to Tara? Because I probably only have like 5 more minutes I can afford. But we connected that way. And I think for couples, how do you connect in multiple different ways, or in people exploring whether they're going to be a couple, that you don't get clouded? And I think that's kind of neurologically, that's that reactivity of, can we be intentional? Can we feel and be intentional rather than just being reactive? And the space helped us do that. There's other probably ways that people can
I'm
do
sorry.
that.
I'm laughing because it just occurred to me that is the first and the last time you sent me flowers.
No. Well,
Whoa,
sent
you called out.
you flowers.
So let me just say we have an agreement that that's okay with me. I'm fine with buying my own flowers. His dad was the funeral director, and flowers were for other
For death.
for
So
death.
let me explain
Okay.
my feeling about flowers. So what a horrible, horrible metaphor for love, because it's something that is temporal, that after like 2 days dies. What kind of metaphor is that of like, I'm going to give you something, but it's going to die right away? And that's my love.
He told me his feelings about that very early on. So totally informed consent. That's why it was a very big gesture when they arrived.
And we would
internationally.
we would explore
Or it was
finding
like, I'm breaking up with you. Here's flowers that will die.
That will die, just like our love.
just like my
Our
love.
love is slowly dying.
Like my love for you. This is just slowly fading away.
Okay, this is going dark.
Yeah. But I did give you flowers other times. It just was that they were out of people's gardens.
Yes, you might not want to admit
I'm
that.
also kind of
You don't want to spend
financially,
money.
cautious, or Dutch.
You're trying to. I
I'm
know.
trying to
You're
avoid
trying to
saying
avoid saying Dutch.
but
It's okay.
Van Dyke. And so I would just kind of find flowers in the church garden or neighbor's garden, and I would bring flowers that way to Tara. Well, growing up, being in the funeral home, we would bring flowers to Mom, but it would just be leftovers from the service. So we would gather together and make a nice bouquet and give it to Mom. So I have a lot of issues I have to work through around flowers still.
Apparently a trigger.
Yeah, sorry. So where were we going with that?
Well,
Back
that
to
was
finding
just
your
about-
life partner.
Right, and finding different ways to communicate and the intimacy that grows in different domains at the same pace. I think that's, that was a really good point, because you can be too heavy in one area and miss out on intimacy in other ways.
Yeah.
I think, that time apart kind of helped us even things out and decide what was important and that we did want to be back together.
Yeah. And that then built on, how are we going to do things together? So the longer term, so the dating part, that was really part of important piece of making sure we were on the same page and we were connected for the right reasons and having a bigger perspective. I think that's the thing that's central to what's made our relationship last. So it started out at the beginning of, we're attracted to each other, we care about each other, but oftentimes that's not enough. Right? That the feelings fade, or they change, or you have challenges that come. And so what's the bigger thing? And so we often ask our kids, we've asked Claire, any single people that we have in our lives, of just like, well, what's the reason to have a relationship? Is it just to meet your needs? And are there other ways to do that? Or is there something bigger? And
okay, to throw another quote in there, the Beatles song, "Love is all you need." And that's another thing that you're saying, it isn't enough just to have feelings. And we also believe that love isn't just a feeling. That love's a choice that you make every day. Love's like an action and a choice. And so in choosing someone to hitch your whole life to, it's a big decision to choose to love that person. Not just that big, heady day of your wedding day, but like every day.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perspective we came from, that we were really lucky enough to gain from both of our sets of parents who had that kind of relationship and had that perspective on marriage as a choice and as a sacrifice, even more than just, what do I get out of this?
Yeah, and you talk to people, there's a lot of literature about marriages that last, relationships that last are about those bigger things. For us, it's grounded in our faith I like to think about, and I'm so thankful that you see interacting with me as an act of your spiritual life, as your relationship with God, because I'm so glad you don't treat me the way I deserve to be treated. But that's the same way of, so if we have a relationship that's bigger than us,
Hmm.
that then informs why we're going to stick through the difficult times, or when we hurt each other or do things that are difficult, how we repair that. Having something bigger than just the other frees you up to respond differently.
Exactly. I think that, I mean, that leads into what I was thinking of for just kind of a list of what we think might be helpful for other people
Yeah.
who kind of want that long-term committed lifetime relationship.
Yeah.
Starting with shared values, I think, is the major foundation. It doesn't mean you can't live with somebody who has different views. We definitely have different views, but it's really helpful to have the same foundation and the same bigger picture of what marriage is, or what, what you're hooked into as your bigger purpose and your
Mhm.
bigger, I think, shared purpose too, we really believe is helpful.
Yeah. And part of that shared purpose is finding humor together and with each other.
Yeah, it's one of our shared values, but I'm even thinking deeper, and our faith is our biggest foundational value that
Mhm.
gives us our whole reason for how we make our big choices in life, and why we do what we do, how we raise our children, why we choose to love each other, what we think about marriage, all the big things.
Yeah,
We kind of are ascribed to the same faith set of values. That helps a lot.
that does.
Yeah.
And that feeds. So I think there's two parts of shared. There's the big kind of picture in terms of values and beliefs, and then there's the smaller
The chosen
shared,
values, like sense of humor
the
and
sense of
yeah.
humor and activities together. So like finding, for a lot of couples that have kids, that becomes a shared value or shared focus, is parenting and raising the kids, whether it's the financial side, the emotional side, that both partners invest in the kids, and that's what they unite over. You need more than that, because kids leave,
Right.
and that doesn't foster a lasting kind of connection. And so what is that? So humor for us, kayaking,
Yeah, I
doing,
don't know. Kayaking is a value.
it's not a value, but it's a shared
Shared
activity.
activity.
Shared
So
activity.
thinking about that.
Yeah, but the things that you find important
Yeah.
when they're shared, that's really helpful. And I mean, that's where we started, coming from, we met going on a summer mission trip at the same faith-based organization. So that was a good foundation. And then we developed friendship. So
Mhm.
we really, long-term relationships don't have to start with friendship, but it's really great to love to just hang out with the person that you're married to. You're really friends at the base of it.
Yeah.
Because romantic feelings and love take huge, big ups and downs. And in the downs, it can feel like it's not worth it if you don't have a shared friendship. So we think that's a really good core thing to look for in
Mhm.
someone you're going to hook your life to. Feeling like, I mean, I do feel like after all these years and all the friends we have, we're the best of friends.
Yep. I
It's,
like.
So,
it's also pretty countercultural right now. I
yeah.
feel like a lot of, I don't know, a lot of media and things that are put out there is that it's mostly just that initial attraction.
Right.
is
We
what it
love
should be
that
built on.
rush of romantic love and attraction, but those things don't. Notice we haven't even gotten farther down in our list. I don't think there's one thing on my list that has to do with physical attraction. Because when I ask some of my friends, okay,
Hey,
what are
wait a
Well,
second.
I'm just saying it's a bonus.
Okay.
I'm just
I was
saying
like, I'm
it's
looking at the
not-
sheet here. It's like,
it's not one of the top things. When I ask some people, what are you looking for in somebody you want to date?
Mhm.
And their first 5 things are, tall,
Dark,
dark,
handsome.
I like, well, those things all may change. Those things aren't the lasting things. Those are a great bonus, but they're not on the top of my list.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's helpful for them to be on the top of anyone's list, because it's not what leads to somebody being, a good long-term life partner. It's finding a life partner is like a business partner, sort of, in a way. Like, you're going to have a shared purpose for the rest of your life, ultimately, hopefully. So, I wouldn't want to go into business with somebody just because they look pretty. I want them to have really strong values and strong core that kind of fits with my same purpose and where I'm headed. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of
But I think that's an important kind of shared value belief, is that this is a long-term life
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah,
So
that was one of my points, is what did they see about long-term commitment?
yeah,
Because I learned that about you, meeting your family and seeing that your parents have a long-term commitment. You know, like, I tend to be the person who keeps a car until it goes into the ground. I'm a long-term commitment girl.
I appreciate that about you, because I need my tires rotated and oil changed right now, and
Yeah,
you're
there you
still
go.
with me.
Yeah. So having a shared idea about what is a long-term commitment, or what is marriage,
Yeah, or that's what we're looking for in terms of
or I see
dating,
where you're
friendship,
going. Yeah.
is this is the outcome. This is the big thing of this. Oh, this is forever. I mean, I remember when we were newly married, before that, we had our own apartments. You wake up and you're like, oh, you're still here. This is going to be every day.
When we were first married.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This means every day. Yeah. And then you have to hash things out.
But that makes then the ability to do the relational repair easier, because there's not an escape. I think without that big picture, escapes are way too easy. And relationships are way too temporary, because it's like, oh,
As soon as it gets hard.
right, I don't like this, or 3 out of 4 things I'm not happy with, but I can find someone that has all 4 things. And so the commitment isn't to something bigger than yourself, like longevity or doing it because of faith. It ends up being, I can find the perfect fit or the better fit, and we leave the relationship when it gets hard, or we leave the relationship when it's not quite what we expect. And it can change, right? I mean, some of the old vintage vows for good or for bad. How does it go again?
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
For richer, for poorer.
For in sickness and
Repeat
in health.
after me.
Okay. Wow, it
Thank
feels
you,
like we're
Claire.
getting married
I
again.
know.
Right? I still
Is
would
this a
say
surprise
yes.
vow renewal?
Yeah, that's right. Surprise! Claire just got ordained on the internet.
This morning.
But that it's not conditional on things going well or things going poorly.
However, like, disclaimer, sometimes there are reasons that
Granted.
there are deal breakers,
Yeah.
where you need to end the
You
relationship.
need to get out.
We're not saying every relationship that starts out as an intentional lifelong commitment needs to stay that way.
Right. And there's lots of that. And maybe we can talk about
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, another time when you need safety. I mean, that goes back to the first part of it, of safety for that long-term commitment. And if safety's not there, it's hard to continue on that process.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, safety and trust are huge on our list as well.
Yeah.
For what makes it, and that goes to me, that goes with friendship. I'm not going to be best of friends with somebody I don't trust.
Yeah.
And so trust is obviously foundational to a good relationship, and safety. I added too to our list. Does the person love you the way you are? Which is, obviously we all want to be loved just how we are, but also not want you to just stay that way.
Yeah.
Encourage your growth.
Yeah. And support your interests, and it doesn't always have to be the same interests. Like I will never want to go see another birth happen in my whole entire life, and you just got back from a birth.
Yeah.
And that gives you joy coming alongside people.
And you'll never skydive with me.
No, nope.
I've gone skydiving with all of our children.
I will wait to see
And
whether you bounce or land softly, but
you
I'm not
came
going
and
up in the plane.
watched the
You're
first.
the only one that didn't go.
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, sorry.
He did.
I don't believe you were in this conversation.
You're right, and I wouldn't go either. So
You did offer one time because you
I
thought
did,
that
and
that
I
would
was
be an act of
sweating.
love.
Yep.
And watching you even say that you would come with me, I released you instantly. Please don't. Please don't come.
Yeah, that was an act of love on your part too, because it's like, well, this is going to be a
I
sacrifice.
don't need you to come and do this
No.
to prove that you want to be with me.
No.
This can be my thing.
But it's encouraging those type of things, and
Yeah.
it comes out of trust. And I mean, we're pretty compatible. So when you look at kind of goodness of fit between people dating and relationship, do you want that compatibility? We're compatible on everything but geographical
That's what
location.
I say. We're geographically incompatible.
Hmm.
And yet, because of other things, that's a kind of commitment you've made to live in the Midwest where there's slate great skies and
I tell David almost every day of February, I'm only here because I love you. When it's below 0 and I haven't seen the sun for a month.
yeah. And so when our kids were dating, it was asking them, is this person building you up? Are they encouraging you to grow as well as appreciating you for where you are right now? And it being recursive, it's going
Mutual.
both ways. Mutual,
Right.
that's a better word.
Right.
Being mutual and being back and forth, that it's a balance
Right.
between give and take.
Yeah.
Ivan Bazar-Meninaj, Contextual Family Therapy. I just love citations.
Okay,
So.
good. Go ahead.
No, that was it. I'm
Okay,
done.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll throw that in there.
What other or what other things should people be looking for?
I mean, this kind of is along the same lines, but that the person honors and respects you for what's important to you,
Yeah.
including, your family, your friends. They're not cutting you off from the things that are important to you.
But that
That's
doesn't
huge.
mean just going with everything, like not agreeing, just agreeing with everything.
Oh, no.
So honoring doesn't mean, I just have to be walked over.
Not at all.
So how would you
Show me an example. You show me an
Oh,
example.
man, I was too slow.
I saw what you were doing there.
Man, I want to do the conflict part.
Oh yeah, was that the next one on my list?
Yeah, that was the next list.
How well
part.
do they do conflict? I mean, that's huge. How do you handle it when you disagree about something?
Yeah, so if you're in a relationship, and I always ask our kids, how are things going? What happens when you disagree or when you hurt each other? How do you have a repair? And some of them go, oh, we've never really disagreed or fought. It's like, well, then that worries me, because there might be this idea of honoring, but it's compromising without having any core of you can feel differently. Like we feel differently about geography and weather.
Mm-hmm.
I like slate gray skies. You like this thing called sunshine. I don't understand it. And we can be playful about it. We can be serious about the difference. How do we appreciate that, of like when it's February, encouraging you to go to someplace sunny?
Mm-hmm.
And supporting that, where that's honoring and not saying, well, this is how I feel about it. To honor me, you just
So
have
you
to
should be
suffer.
like me and suffer.
Yeah. But that idea of conflict, of being able to stay on task, to be able to talk about passionately the differences that you have, either finding some compromise, but not, then how do we live with the tension in honoring ways of holding two different views? I think we see that in relationships all the time, whether it's like current culture, mask, not mask. How do people navigate that? And do we all have to see the things the same way, or else we just break relationship?
Mm-hmm.
That conflict part is really important. So I think as you're looking for a relationship, practice fighting, practice repair.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because
there's
fighting isn't a sign that the relationship isn't doing well. It's how do you come back and resolve that,
yeah,
and care for each other. And there's always compromise sometimes that one or the other has to make, and honoring that compromise, and the one who, changed their plans and lived in the Midwest.
Fair enough.
I think our first disagreement was about who was going to stand up in our wedding. I mean, I think we probably had small disagreements when we were dating, but not really our first fight that I feel like we didn't end up seeing eye to eye.
Yeah,
was about who was going to be your best man.
This is making up for my story about Nathan. And now you're going to stand up for him. I see. I see.
Well, I have one sister and he has one brother, so I thought clearly that's who's the best man and the what's it called? Your best
groomsman,
best girl,
best man and best woman. I believe it is.
And your brother was young, so you thought he probably wouldn't be able to
to
keep the responsibility. Anyway,
we didn't have
for
that
whatever
relationship.
reasons, yes, you stuck to your guns,
I felt
strongly, and I still felt
it.
strongly on the other side.
Yeah, and we were able to.
It was our first big disagreement, but
navigate that. And now you say, "I told you so," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's fair. You were right. I'll confess on."
No disrespect
public.
to Andy. He was a great best man.
He's and still a good friend, but I probably should have gone with my little
it doesn't
baby
mean
brother.
it doesn't mean that was the right thing. It was just our first thing that we didn't come down on on the same page. For bigger things, we had to make some huge life decisions that we didn't always feel the same about when we were making those choices. We came to have sort of a pattern of how we decided on those things. We'd kind of talk about it, like choosing where to go to grad school
Yeah.
or some of the big things. We'd talk about it, and then we would take a week or two apart and pray about
Yeah.
it separately, talk to friends who we trusted,
Yeah.
whatever, without talking about it. And then we'd have a dinner date, say, okay, what did you come up with? And what did you, and I think 100% of the time we came back after those 2 weeks, we were on the same page.
Yeah. Or we would just defer making a decision unless it had to be made. And then if we were in disagreement and it had to be made, it was who had more either responsibility, skill set,
Right. Because
input.
when we left California,
Yeah.
I cried all the way,
You
but it was
did.
important because you were moving to your first big job on your way to your PhD program.
Yeah.
So
One other example of us disagreeing and repairing, I think it goes to we can't be afraid to have the rupture. I think a lot of times people live where we try to avoid the disagreements or kind of that conflict avoidant. And I forget even what we were having a disagreement about, but you remember this when I gave you my therapist voice of so honey,
that
what
was
I
very
what I
early
hear
on.
you saying is, and holy cow, was that the wrong thing to say? And it wasn't the wrong thing to say because I wasn't being
it wasn't the
David.
wrong words.
Yeah.
It was you were
I was doing
and
something to you.
You know, you were in your 20s trying on your new skills that you were learning as a new therapist. So I totally understand, but it was not David. It was a whole different voice. It was a whole different language. And I didn't respond well. I
No.
didn't want to talk to therapist David. I
Yeah.
wanted my husband David. And so
Yeah. And then I
that
believe
was the only time you tried that.
Yeah. And then I believe my response was, I'm sorry, David's not here right now. Please leave a message at the beep and I'll get back to
I
you.
think that was in your head. Your face was very blank.
Because, well, that's what was happening in my head.
Yeah.
Because I was learning a new skill set. I didn't know how to be other than as a clinician and not myself. But I think that also comes out of, I wanted to fix things and not necessarily be in the
Just
difficult
listen.
time and then work on a repair. So I think for the takeaway there, that was a lot of stories. The takeaway is don't be afraid of kind of relational rupture or relational difficulties. The repair is the more important part. It's not the absence of problems, but it's how we go about finding ways to live together in that can be rich.
Nobody's going to live together for a lifetime and not have some conflict.
No. And even having projects, right? We had kids as projects. Now we have this as a project to do together. This is the way we're keeping our marriage strong.
That's right. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah. Thanks for supporting our marriage with this podcast.
Yeah. And speaking of somebody else in the room, I think another thing we value a lot is input from the people closest to us. We tell our kids that, well, we didn't have to tell our kids that when they, find their significant other, they have gone out of their way to introduce them to their family and their closest friends, to just not asking for permission, but looking for input. Does this person seem like a good match for me? And because the people who know you best can see things from a different angle sometimes.
Yep.
So it might be able to point out some red flags or things you haven't noticed or you've sort of just decided not to notice. So I think that's important. We all come with all of those relationships as part of making up who we are, and we're not separate from that.
Yep.
So,
and how well do they fit together? I think that we want to kind of wrap up here and talk a little bit about where do we find those people?
Yeah,
in our
where do I
lives?
find
Where do you
these
find them?
people?
So I'll give you a couple of
changed.
addresses that you can find these people. No,
Not creepy again.
not creepy.
Most of the young couples I work with, because I ask people when I'm working with them at a birth, where'd you guys meet? And most of the stories now, people are finding each other online because it's harder to have, I guess, activities and, college classes. And when you're beyond college, it gets harder to find people and shared activities. But we're all about getting out there and doing things that you enjoy to find like-minded people. Often that's how it happened for us. It's how it's happened for a lot of people that are friends of ours.
Yep.
Doing shared activities so that you already sort of have that foundation of this is what I love to do.
Yeah. And I think exploring of that, removing the pressure of I have to find that one to, okay, let's go out and get to know each other as friends. I think at the college that we went to undergrad, there was this weird pressure of you have to find that person and you have to find it within this time frame or
Yeah.
you'll never be around another person that's with marriage potential. And that pressure is horrible.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
And so being able to go out, try differently, and it'll vary. Like you might find that friend at the very first date, or it might be you're a serial dater and it takes a while because
To me, it's sort of like finding a job. We've watched our kids go through this process where you're finding jobs in different ways. And sure, you can find them online, but online it's just harder to know who that person is. And it's more chance of finding a real shared interest when there's personal connections. You're getting introduced to somebody by somebody who knows them. And so the more you kind of get out and hang out with people, the more those shared connections will happen.
and in groups, it's always good group dates.
I believe in that too. I think you learn a lot more about a person when you see how they interact with a bigger group of people rather than just one-on-one dates all the time, because you're on your best behavior and you don't see the interaction with other people. So I think it's helpful to spend the first part of your dating life in group activities and just learn more about who they really are.
And I think this is the place I want to add the caution. If you're in a relationship where the person is removing you from your friends, your family, there's like, it's only me, that's a danger sign. So that's not necessarily a flourishing relationship. And I think sometimes we're talking about friendship and it can kind of be isolating. There's a danger to that. I like the group dating because of the information, but there should be space for you and I, even after 30 years of marriage, to have friendships that then are involved and speak into our relationship versus I just need you all the time, just you, honey. I mean, there's a creepiness, and if you're not careful, that can get to a place where there's isolation
dangerous.
And dependency
Yeah,
on the
bottom
other.
line is if you feel like there's red flags, you should pay attention to that.
Yeah, and talk about it with someone, whether it's a therapist, a spiritual leader, a friend, but don't just dwell in isolation in that relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And so I think we're going to wrap up for today. We hope that you have some ideas about how to find that forever friend and flourishing, what's another F word? Flourishing.
Don't ask me.
Yeah, no, flourishing relationship, and that but it's not where you get completed. It's where you're able to kind of flourish together and mutually challenge each other to grow. So I hope you have a good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are and whenever you're listening to this. Follow us. Click on the button. If is there a button somewhere? Click on a button. Find where all your good podcasts are located.
Yes.
Yeah. Call the radio station and tell them you like us and you want us to stay on the air. And we will talk with you soon.